first day of Konsoll. For those of you who don't know, my name is Satoshi Horak. I'm a lecturer at Teesside University. And yesterday we organised a really great event called Konsoll Connect, the first time we've ran it. And it was a really useful event, I think, in terms of bringing a wide range of speakers specific to, say, the business aspect of games development. And we thought it was such a great opportunity to bring so many minds specific to publishing and investment that sometimes is a field that I think is a bit of a dark art to kind of get a good understanding of. That we thought it'd be a great idea to bring those people all together back again today and make them available to your questions. So before we get started, I'll just say if for anyone watching on the live stream, you're welcome to send in any questions. And after about 40 minutes, when we go to Q&A, then we can field those questions as well. So without further ado, we'll kind of get on to it. So if the slide is not already showing, I'll just give an introduction. So here we have Ron Ashtiani, and well, I guess I might as well let you guys introduce yourselves, really. You can probably do a better job than me.
Hello there. This is not on. It is shown. Hello there. My name's Ron Ashtiani. I joined the games industry 22 years ago. I started off as an artist, worked my way up, became an art director, eventually joined management, and I founded my own company called Atom Hawk in the UK, which is a visual design company. Ran that for 10 years. Eventually, I managed to sell it. And I since left Atom Hawk and have become an investor and a consultant. I work in the kind of financing space.
Cool. Hello, everyone. Hope you can hear me well. My name is Javian, or you can just call me Jay. I work for Miniclip as a senior commercial associate. I've been in the company for 5.5 years. I manage a lot of our publishing deals, as well as looking at investments that we're looking at these days.
Hi, my name is Dan Tranström. I work for a company called Goodbye Kansas Game Invest. We're based out of Stockholm in Sweden. We're part of the bigger Embracer group. We invest in only games companies and studios in the Nordic region and also branching out a little bit. Our take is to be working very, very closely to all the studios that we invest in, to try to coach them and support them. So most of us that work with us have like more than 15 years experience in the gaming industry, from production, design, art, and coding, and also a lot of startups.
Hi, I'm Andrew Parsons. I'm the head of production at Devolver Digital. Devolver is a indie publishing label. We've been in business about 10 years. I've been with them for the last 6.5, thereabouts, and that's me.
I'm Stephen Hay. I am I'm a freelancer. I do marketing and also biz dev and that kind of area of things for video games companies. So I'm here primarily as a big part of my work, which is working for Merge. Merge Games are a mid-tier publisher based in just south of Manchester, out of the UK.
Okay, great. So I guess the first question that is probably worth asking is probably a really fundamental one. So how would you define the difference between what is considered most commonly as a publisher in the games industry and an investor? So we could ask the investor first. How would you define what you do and what you offer to developers, really?
From an investment perspective, we try to grow companies. I think that's and growth from that standpoint is whatever you think is growth. We're trying to enable your vision and your dreams or the company's dreams by investing financial capital into your company, which actually means that we also have an ownership in the company, so releasing some of that. We work very, very long term, and that's what most investors do. Also working very, very actively, like trying to build a company, work with you guys to become even better. So we're looking for diamond in the rough companies that we see huge potential in, and then help them take that leap. And then also maybe help them come in contact, for example, with publishers, which is, I guess, the other part of it as well.
Yeah. Well, actually, before we answer the other half of that question, as a show of hands, who here thinks publishers or investors are the bad guys?
They're in the back. They're in the back.
A few half
They're in the
questions,
back.
a little bit shy.
See you.
Show of hands, who here... Who here is not clear on what both of those types of people do? Okay, good. So maybe one of the publishers might want to kind of define what. I guess the really important question is what can publishers offer game studios and developers?
Yeah, to
Yeah,
okay. Okay. So I think the relationship is different. It's a business partnership, and you go to a publisher to take care of all the things that you can't do, all the things that you might not, be able to do because you're focused on making great games. So all the business stuff, all the paperwork, all the admin, all these things that a good publisher should bring to help you make your game. And I think kind of probably treading on what you're going to say, but it's the same thing really. Is take away all the stress and hassle that you don't need and allow you to do what you're good at and to do what you're really driven to do, which is make games. You're not driven to do business deals all the time, or maybe see your game as a thing which is an artifact, which is a great entertainment product, but also it's an artifact to generate funds, to make money, to help you build your company. And I think any publisher should be there to say, okay, what can we take off you? What can we do to support you and to make your vision come to reality?
Yeah, I mean, as Stephen's just said most of it, I think a good publisher should be there to support the developer, to help with things that you don't want to do. But also, to Dan's point, it's common, it's not all the time, but it's common that a publisher will work with a developer on a title basis rather than a company basis. So an investor might look at the company as a whole, the developer. Publishers, like in the case of Devolver, we always talk to a developer about their game, that one game. They might want to make more, but we always think that single game needs like 100% of our focus. So we tend to approach it from, it's the one game, and then we'll see where the future takes us.
There's also, in the investor space, there's actually a number of different sort of flavors of investor as well. So you've got guys like Dan who are really focused around the actual sort of, it's investing in the company, but it's investing in the company so that you can focus on your products. There's also what you would call an institutional investor, which is I'm working with a lot of institutional investors now, including a company called Mercia in the UK. And we're more focused around what they call like equity and debt financing. So that means, for example, if you had a competitor down the road, so say you got your company to a nice sort of 30-man team, and there was a 20-man team down the road, and you wanted to buy their company as well, join them in with yours, that's the kind of investor that you would go to for what they call debt financing, which is when you're going to acquire a company, you need some short-term sort of loan to be able to bridge the gap. And then when you have those two companies together and you start working together, you're generating more revenue, and then you can pay the debt back. So it's almost more like traditional lending.
Right. I think whereas for Miniclip, we're a bit of a hybrid because we're also a mobile games developers ourselves. So when we look at games that we publish, apart from helping them, supporting them on the marketing side, user acquisition side, we also help support them on a game design side, where we can look to them and say, hey, we think, if you do this and this and this based on our experience, it's going to be helpful for your games. And as an investor ourselves, and because of the experience that we have as a publisher, sometimes what happens was because we started working with a developer over 1 or 2 games, we realized actually there's a lot of synergy between that company and ours. So then we eventually started to slowly invest and eventually acquired them to become part of Miniclip. So that's also happened before.
So we have different roles, but I think it's the common thread is to help support you guys, like with what you're doing in different ways. And one can work without having an investor and only a publisher, or the other way around. It's there's nothing that says that you can't combine the two usually.
Okay, good. So, it seems like Miniclip have a very particular type of games that I think people associate with your company, and Devolver Digital as well have a very particular brand and kind of aesthetic and set of values that you can see as a strand throughout the games that you publish. Are there certain qualities or characteristics that you look for in the kind of games developers that you look to work with? Maybe not just on a kind of a games and mechanics basis or play style, but in terms of the the culture or the people or, you know, anything like that?
From a Devolver point of view, we have an incredibly diverse roster of games and developers, and hopefully some of you have played some of our games, but you know, within the industry, we have like a common thread that people say, oh yeah, you make violent games or pixel art games or whatever it is. We have a massively diverse roster of games, and they're a product of the individual nature about the developers. In terms of what we look for from developers, it's you know, the kind of basics are technical ability, track record, and you know, the ability to present whatever it is they want to do in a clear way. But we have worked with people that have never made a game before, and a lot of these skills will come from experience. So we have to have a very open mind. And you know, I'm slightly anomalous in this panel because Devolver we have signed games off of like GIFs off of Twitter, like. But the reason we've done that is because the quality of the game has shone so brightly and so immediately. It didn't matter it was their first game. It was like, wow, this is incredible. So we do have some kind of baseline criteria for what we'd like to see, but that would never stop us from, you know, really talking, partnering up with someone who we thought were really compelling.
Yeah, similar to us, likewise. I think one of the very important criteria we see, apart from all those technical capabilities, is their willingness and openness to work with people. So some developers, although they say, oh, I really want to work with a publisher, but then when you start the relationship, they become, oh, actually, I don't want to hear everything about the publisher say. I want to follow and insist on what my route is. So when we look for partners that we want to work with, we would love to work with people who are equally open-minded, because we're all here to learn and collaborate and grow together. And we're very open in sharing, you know, what we think works and what we think doesn't. And equally, we hope that the partners that we work with are like-minded, and they're also wanting similar things when they start working with us as well.
I think an important thing is a shared vision, that you agree on what's being made, and you have to, as a publisher, you can't just take a game and go, well, commercially that will do well, and not have any feel, you know, you can't not be passionate about it. You have to share some of that passion, and because if you were just publishing games for money, you know, if we were just kind of going, okay, well, that plus that equals market opportunity, then every Monday morning would be pretty dull at work, you know. You have to share with what the developer wants to do and their passion. And I think one of the things that I said yesterday is that, you know, we think very carefully when we're choosing partners and games, and developers should think very carefully about the publishers and the personalities in those publishers, because at some point you will disagree on something. You'll disagree on, you know, with maybe the production team at the publisher, and with what you're doing, it could be a tiny disagreement or whatever. And what, you know, the test of a good relationship in that situation is that, but you know what, they believe in what we're doing, they have the same passion, they want to build the same thing. So this is a good conversation to have, actually, and it's not, you know, it's not us versus them in that situation. Yeah. And that sounds kind of like corporate bollocks, but it's true, because our lives would be miserable if we didn't care about what we were publishing.
Yeah, because we should be sitting in the same boat rather than opposite boats. There's sometimes a common misunderstanding why they think, oh, we sit on a different boat as a publisher. No, actually, no. The reason why we sign the game is because we think there's something to the game, and we want to make sure that it becomes something to the players in the future. Yeah. So it's important that you want to work with them as a team rather than as opposites.
What I find really interesting about this is coming at it from a sort of more investor angle. As someone who's more interested in your business rather than your products, it's kind of like the way I would look at it is always like, how do we accelerate your company's structure? So it's things like, for example, if you decided you wanted to go to a second game, and that means you're going to have to scale everything up 1.5 to 2 times the scale it's at, then what I would be looking at doing is sort of more saying, okay, you're the current CEO, but maybe you're going to need a head of operations. Maybe you're going to need someone dealing with this other thing. Maybe you're going to need extra people who take care of this side of the business. And we kind of look at how we can sort of back you and restructure things for growth, which then almost goes hand in hand with the publishing stuff. So it's kind of like some of the people in your company, maybe even yourselves as the sort of head of the company, will be focused on delivering the product. But there's always other people in the company who are focused on making sure that the trains run on time and everybody gets paid and the whole thing just stays together in one piece.
Okay, cool.
Just to add to that, sorry, but there's one other thing that I think is really important to add, especially in the Devolver kind of camp, is that we don't tell our developers how to make their games better. We're there for feedback, and we've all been in the industry for a long time, so we can give them feedback. But it's quite a crucial distinction. Like, it's their game. They're the artists. They're the talent. And when I talk to developers, that I'll play their game and have a look, and I'll be like, well, I don't know if it's going to be a hit. I've got no idea. We don't sign hits, and we don't make hits. Developers make hits, and it's really interesting. Like, I think if you're getting into a relationship with either a publisher or an investor, and they start telling you, oh, you need to do X, Y, and Z, what they're doing is kind of eroding what makes your game unique. Yeah. And I think all of us have kind of said, like, as much as possible, you try and make that partnership. So you suggest things that they might want to try, but from a creative point of view, we never tell them, like, oh, you need to do this. If you do that, you'll get another 5 points on your Metacritic. Like, that doesn't exist. No.
So if you're going to use a bad analogy of that relationship, would that be a marriage? Would that be a mentorship, a tutor, student? How would you use an analogy to, I don't know, define that relationship?
From a publisher point of view, that's a dangerous thing to ask because, there's currently a kind of, especially in the larger studio culture, there's a bit of a watchword around the idea of being friends, companies being families. And the reason that people are saying you should be wary of this is because that is the kind of language which could potentially, lead to, unplanned crunch and people being having bad work practices. So it's like, I don't know. I would like to believe that for all of the people that I work with, which is basically all of the people on the Devolver roster at some point, they can talk to me about anything they want. I am their producer, so. I tend to be the bad cop in that whole scenario. But it's hard to draw, for me personally, it's hard to draw an analogy because I want them to feel completely open and to feel like if their game is going to slip, they need to be able to tell me that in a completely non-judgmental way, like game slip, that's absolutely fine. They need to be able to talk to me about that. And so it's a really hard balance because on one hand, you can say, yeah, I'm always here, you can always talk to me. But on the other hand, I'm the one that signs off milestones. So I'm the one that has to say, okay, guys, love what you've got planned here. It's not going to happen. What are we going to do next? And that's when you have to kind of change. So I think it's like a constantly evolving relationship. At least it is for Devolver. Like, we're pretty unique in the way that we work with our developers.
I think when you invest in a company, it is, in some ways, it's harder to get out of an investment than it is to get out of a marriage. It's because really, at the end of the day, once you put money into somebody's company, it's a private company. You can't get that money back out again. So the only way you're going to ever get that money back out is if they are so successful that they're able to buy you out, which is amazing. That's like the perfect thing. Or they get acquired by somebody else, and then because they get acquired, you get out that way. So really, because you're looking at most of the time, it's going to be probably a 10-year investment, and over 10 years, you get to really know people. It becomes like a proper relationship. You go through the highs and lows together and all sorts of things. So I think it is almost, it's in some ways it's more binding than a marriage, because at least with a marriage you can just get divorced. So you've got to be really careful, both sides. As an investor myself, I want to work with people I like, and I know that over the years I'm going to be able to grow with, and we're going to do cool stuff together. And it should be the same from the sort of investees' point of view.
But it is of course, it is a relationship, right? And I think that I probably can speak for everyone up here. There are other business we could be in, but we love games, and that's why we're still here. And that's like, for example, like our company only invests in games and game studios. That's what we do because we love it. So we share the very passion that you have for making games as much as we do. Especially since most of us has also worked in the industry ourselves, like on the floor coding or designing. And I think that, so we have a lot of friends. I do exactly understand. Like, we're trying to be mentors, we're trying to be coaches, we're trying to be bouncing walls. You can throw off ideas or feedback, and it's quite good to have us around that have a lot of knowledge, to just have a second pair of eyes looking at your company, or just be able to ask questions. Like, we're 5 people now, what can we do with 10 people? And then at least we can say, okay, is that something you want to do? How do you want to grow that? Like we can probably do another investment to help you reach that, or maybe we can do like a deal with a publisher together and do something. So there's a lot of that camaraderie, I guess, in a sense, and also someone that says, have to say sometimes, stop. Like, this is not going to work right now where you're going. This is going to break your game. You're either breaking your game from a design perspective, or you're actually breaking the product, meaning that you won't sell. And you yourself as a company need money to be able to make your next game. So sometimes we're there to just have a little red flag, but also at the same time saying, like, we want to be part of the solution and helping you guys out, but the red flags might come up sometimes, because when you're developing itself, you are so close to your product or your game, so sometimes it's easy to get lost.
That's really funny, actually, because like I said, we've signed games off of GIFs, and it's like sometimes the purity of the thing you see right at the beginning is, it's quite hard to retain that kind of purity. And most developers that I've worked with, when we start rolling and we're signed up and we're all start to, their minds just go, wow, I could do so much. I could do so many things. and to your point, Dan, it's often my job to go, hey, I've just run your prototype from 3-6 months ago, and it still is one of the best things I've played. So why don't you rerun your prototype and see what we all loved about it, and kind of try and rediscover what it is that made you think, oh, this is amazing, and then cut your feature list in half.
Yeah.
Well, Ron, just before that, you mentioned that investing in a company was like a long-term relationship. And maybe this question again goes to there's kind of two sides of publisher and investors. Is there an optimal time? What is the best point to start seeking out a publisher versus what is the best point to start considering investment and growing your company?
I can say from where Merge, from where Merge are, we probably won't consider a game. It's nice to know about games. It's nice to know about what's coming up. But until there's something kind of chunky and playable, that we can see the core loop, even if the full polish isn't on there. It's great if it is, but if we can see the core loop and we can identify within that core loop what's different, what's exciting, what's unique and unusual. At that stage, that's the stage when we are more likely to sign. We have signed things later, we've signed things earlier, but generally that's our stage of kind of seeing the core loop, knowing the size and shape and scale of the project, how that pans out, what we're in for, financially what we're in for in terms of time. That's what we like.
Yeah, we're not dissimilar. We like I say, we have signed games off of prototypes, the real bare bones, the quickest thing a developer can bring together. But that tends to be the kind of smaller scope game, and that's fine if you've got something smaller. These days, we've had the privilege of working with some really experienced developers, and they do tend to turn up with something that does have a layer of polish that the more standard indies aren't able to bring. But yeah, I mean, something that is representative of the core loop at its minimum is what we look for, mainly because prototyping it should be quick. It should be quick and dirty, and it's like, if you come to us with a piece of paper, the premise might be awesome, but I mean, these days prototyping should be as quick. We'll never hold people like, oh yeah, you said you'd do this. Well, there's always a process of triage after that, but there has to be something representative pretty early. And then, so, you asked how long, at what point should you talk to a publisher? I would say the second you finish working on something that you go, this is compelling, right? At that point, get your documentation together, get your build together, and then start because there's no reason in rushing. And if you think you will just want to add another feature in, add it in.
We were having a bit of a laugh about this yesterday. The topic of, because from the publishing point of view, it's when you have a tangible game, but from a business point of view, it's when you actually have a business. and it's really, you can't go out to investors and say, I want you to give me X amount of money for X percent of nothing, because there's nothing there. So you see a lot of kind of, younger generation kind of people at the moment saying, hey, I'm out there raising. And raising is like this new sort of entrepreneur thing of, I'm not really an entrepreneur unless I'm out there getting money from investors. It's rubbish, really. What we all look for is people who are grafting, working hard, bootstrapping a business, building it up, but they get to a point where to make that next jump, they need help. Like, they're either going to be working for the next 5 years, grinding away, or they need to take a bit of money to be able to make that jump. And that's the point where an investor looks at usually a business investment.
I think from our perspective, like our business, we're quite early. But I'm trying to avoid like throwing around terminology. It's like, it's good to know your publisher, talking to them. It's also good to know where you contact which investor. So we can do pre-seed money, which means that we can be very, very, very early. So from our point of view, that could be a prototype as well. Prototype that actually shows your visual fidelity, like it's going to be a super special style game, or it shows your technical skills or your design vision, and that kind of is that like a proof of concept for what potentially your company has. So we go in very, very early. If you go later on, if you released a few games and you want to grow from like 10 people out to 30 people, we usually call that a growth investment, which usually means more money. That might like be 15 million, Norwegian kroner, and it's like a bigger chunk, and that's need to scale your company higher. But we've taken companies from like 5 people up to 15 and continually grow them. So we can be very, very early as well. So, but also from yesterday, in a sense, just recapping is, when is the time? The time is not too late. Sometimes I run into a lot of studios that approach us and say, do you like what we have here? And I said, yes, I love it. Like, how can we solve this? How can we make this happen? And they're saying, like, we have no money in a month. And that is simply too short. We're trying to be as quick as possible to say no, to not waste anyone's time. But to go through the process of a due diligence, meeting your team, talking to everyone, making sure that we can do the investment, that everything is fine, like all the green switches or all the green lights are on, a month is too short. And therefore, a lot of times we have to say no to a case that we really, really like, because we simply cannot make it in that short amount of time. So I would say, like, from an investor perspective, start contacting and talking to us. Like, I have loads and loads and loads of conversations, and like a column in our little program, they just call like keep in contact. They're not in the deal flow. There's not a no, but like keep in contact. Let's make sure that we're in the loop. I think from also when we work with studios that we have invested in, that we work with as partner studios, and we want to work with publishers, we try to make sure that the playable prototype that they present to the publisher has to be kick-ass, has to be absolutely, needs to look very expensive. That's what usually I say, because the competition to get through the doors for the publishers and investors today are so much higher than it was a few years ago. So you just need to push the envelope a lot, and rather stay home, work on your game super, super well, and it's amazing, and it glimmers, and then come to us, because it's going to be so much shorter and easier.
Yeah, agree. So at Miniclip, it's not too similar, not too far off from the gents. What we do take is starting from prototype stage, where you say, okay, I have this incredible idea that I want to share with someone. We start looking at them. But we also go all the way up until even if the game is released. We've signed games that was released for 10 months, and we still saw potential in them, and we were still able to grow them 10x. So we still sign those games. So for us, the range is really wide. What matters is, for us at least, the key concept that we always ask ourselves is this game fun? And if it's fun, how can we grow it? And to what stage can we grow it? If it's fun and we can grow it, then we'll sign it. Doesn't matter what stage it's at.
I think also what you were just saying about there's never a, that it's never too early. Like, one of the things that you see quite often as well is that you can see like management team burnout. So someone founds a company, they're working away, and they're just grinding. They never reach out to investors. They never reach out to publishers. They just grind and grind and grind away in this business. And they get to a point, like after several years, where they're just broken. And there's no point at that point in investing in that company because they're not going to go the distance. They're not going to go the next 3-4 years that it takes to ramp that business up. So that's another thing is like really, there is this thing about doing it all on your own. And there is also a point where you have to kind of reach out for some help. And knowing that point, knowing when you've still got gas left in the tank and then going for investment is definitely the right time.
Yeah, I think it's super, super important to, like, what we're looking for is for, of course, a lot of passion. But I also mentioned that in yesterday's panel, like, we're looking for people that is knowledgeable about their own incompetence. And what that means is that you're actually open to the concept of you don't know everything, and to be able to reach out for that help. And that can be from a publisher side or an investor side to grow your company or to make games smarter, better, faster, engines, whatever that is. It means that you're open to the concept that I simply cannot solve all of this on myself. And that's, for example, that's why we have focused on investment in game companies. We are not ourselves a publisher. We don't have a big marketing know-how, and we use partners for that because we try to specialize. So we try to be also understanding our own incompetence, so to speak. And so should you. Just be honest with yourself, learn, talk to people, ask a lot of questions, but open your mind for that possibility because we are here and we're not dangerous.
Yeah,
Okay.
communication's big in that as well.
Right.
In the sense that if you do start early, as Dan said and as Ron said, like if you start talking early, talking from personal experience, Devolver, we know an awful lot of developers, and we don't work with them all. But we go to every GDC, every PAX, every Gamescom. We're here, and it's like there's nothing wrong having conversation. And sometimes the game that you're making right now, it might not be ready, it might not be right. But if you kind of keep honing your craft, there will come a time where that conversation will matter. But it does require early communication and sticking with it.
Okay, great. So I think we'll just have one more question, and then if you guys have been thinking up some great questions, I'd like to pass it out to you guys. But on a practical level, both as publishers and investors, what makes a successful pitch in your experience?
Shall I go first? Successful pitches. So the best. I get asked this question quite a lot. So I was saying I'm going to invent a game. It's a really good game, and I'm going to do my pitch deck for it. So then I can answer it by giving people this pitch deck. But it's for something. The pitch deck has to contain all the facts. Give me how long it's going to take. What your USP, why is it really different? How big your team, what you made before, why you can make it, what you're making, how long it's going to take you to make, what resources you need to do that, maybe what you need from a publisher as well, what you see, because often what a developer thinks they need from a publisher, we can add much more, or we can help with porting or whatever, a whole range of services. So all that kind of has to be there, but there's something else, and this is what you were saying before about signing off a GIF, is like the best pitch that I've seen in recent years was for What the Golf. And What the Golf guys just came to me and they handed me a phone and they said, "We hate golf," and just gave me that. And then if you know What the Golf,
perfect, yeah.
You just, okay, I'm in, right? Because the game sells itself. And if you can do that, if you can have that magic, amazing, I saw the what Curve was sent for Bomber Crew, and those guys just sent a video and said, "Hey, Simon at Curve, we've got this game." And I've seen a few pitches like this recently, and they seem to work as well, actually, where somebody's kind of narrating a video. And sometimes, they've kind of cheated and paid somebody on Fiverr to narrate it for them. So then maybe if they've got a whiny Mancunian voice like I have, you probably don't want that. And so you can get these really professional videos, with a voice that you'll trust, even though it's not the developer. But this video was, here's the plane, we have a bomber, you control the crew. And, it's essentially a 5-minute video, and you're like, yeah, I'm in, and something that instinctive that your heart can say yes to is often stronger. But you still need all that, you still need that, okay, now I'm in, who are you, what are you, what's the shape of the project? So I still need those facts. But it's heart and mind, and you have to sell both of them, basically. You have to win with my heart, and then I have to convince people internally. So that's where the mind bit comes in, because I'm very gullible. And I just fall for things, So, and I'm often, this is part, I did joke yesterday that doing biz dev, kind of scouting for games, is the easiest job that I've had. Where I have to kind of pull up and be professional is, don't show the developer you're falling for this game completely, because I often do, because I don't want to raise false hopes as well. So I often, I love this game, but there's a process, and it's not a big process. We're like Devolver, we're not a big company. We don't have panels and boards. It's just 2 or 3 people.
We don't have a board.
Well, no, we don't. No. But we're kind of like you in terms of not swearing. We're quite pixely though.
Yeah.
I mean, you personally swearing.
Yeah. I do like swearing.
But there's no big process. It's just kind of okay. Well, we love it, and then but I have to convince we're a private company, and the guy who owns the company signs the checks, and I have to convince him. So I often have to go, oh, I love it, but the guy who signs the check is so there's always that kind of gatekeeper, and that's something to be aware of. I think when you're pitching is that. I can't make if I could, that would be great, but it's not just me. But there's only 1 or 2 other people involved at any time.
But from an investment side, then I assume you're looking for different things.
I think we're all still looking for that product, that prototype, that video, that's something, the proof of concept that pops, that we can see that has the sizzle. that is, what's that you react to? And one thing that I think is important is whatever you show us, go to the core quite fast. We see so many games, we meet so many studios each year, and it is embarrassing sometimes how short the time span is for you to look at it, or to focus on certain things. So in order to show us what you need to do, like just to get my attention, if you get my attention, I will come up with all the questions. Since a lot of people that we talk to and meet us and would like to have an investment does not have a lot of knowledge about exactly how it works. So in that case, it is actually our job and our role to coach and support you through the process of how it works and what we need and what we would like to have. So example, if the question is, do you have a budget? And say, no. Do you know what the budget is? Yes. Okay. Do you want help with that? We have templates. We can work with you towards something. I think that we do a lot of mentoring and coaching on that level as well. And I know that the publishers does that as well. Like a good publisher can support you in that because it's probably the first time you've been there. So for us it is, show us something that pops. Then I will ask you, who are you? Like what's your background? Like do you have experience, no experience? Just to try to form or see your company as a shape and where you are going and how you're going to go there. And you might not have like a written down mission and vision statement. That's not really important as long as we understand where you're heading, and how we can see the collaboration. We're trying to look for passion to see, can we work with each other in 5 years, and where are you going, and can we join you on that magical journey?
Devolver is completely remote, right? We don't have an office. So to both of your points, like, receiving materials which make it easier for me to share it with someone else is crucial. Because if I meet a developer at a show like this, I've got this great game, it's a narrative RPG, and it does this, and it's really, really great material, there's a great mechanic, we're in that, and I'll just lose it. But I might write it all down, but then I have to explain it to someone else. So if I get the video which explains it for me, and someone's talking over their prototype, in terms of materials, that's gold, because it means that I don't have to then screw up that developer's vision when I'm trying to talk to another Devolver about it on a Slack channel. And that's crucial because, when you do work remotely, it's easy to lose little bits of information. I mean, to the point about projecting forward into the future, I always think that some kind of a previs or a really great piece of concept art, even a sizzle reel or something to help us understand where you want to go is useful, because normally, for me, I play all the prototypes and they can be white boxy. But if I'm playing a prototype and that's rough, because I come from a development background, I'll just completely look through the roughness of the gameplay. But if I'm playing a prototype and I've got that concept art right there, like, yeah, in the future, this thing is going to look like this, it makes the job of using your imagination pretty much nil. You don't have to imagine what it's going to be like in 3 years. And in fact, we've had some developers who have recorded a playthrough of their prototype and then taken it to an After Effects person and just gone, this is completely fake, but with all of the particles and all of the lighting and all of the cool motion blur and everything else, this is how it could look. And it's great because, like I said, we see a lot of games, and the more that developers can do to remove the need for me to use my imagination, the easier it is for me to explain it to other people, alongside all of the basics of timing, budget, team makeup, that kind of thing.
I think what's also important is that before you even send out the pitch deck, try to understand what the publishers do. Because sometimes what I receive is that when you can just go onto the publisher's website, right, or even on the App Store and Google Play, and just understand what kind of games do they usually do. Because what you have could be completely different from what they're looking for, right? So, for example, for Miniclip, we look at all sorts of games: sports, multiplayer, and even the mid-core hardcore games. But one thing we don't look at is we don't do hyper-casual games. But so many times people have sent us hyper-casual games thinking that we do hyper-casual games. But just understanding this part will help you sell your games even easier than what it would be. And a lot of times we have to reject good hyper-casual games, not because they suck, but because we don't do them, if that makes sense.
I know that I've usually talked to my partner studios that going to maybe meet like publisher for the first time. It's like, don't ask them what they're looking for, because it should be your homework. No. Like, it's one thing sitting down with a publisher, and we do that quite often, to just say, like, how does your strategy look like in the coming 5 years? It's like, is there anything that you see moving? Are you moving away from something, moving towards something? I think that's more what should be pitched next year, like seeing that. But don't go there and sit down in a meeting. Hello, my name is Sven. What games are you looking for? Because it's like, no. You should be the driving force, right? You should be the one that goes bananas, like that. Make amazing things that we just want to throw money at you, or incompetence and knowledge. But then it's super important to do your homework, to know if you're looking for 200 million Norwegian to make this amazing first MMORPG game that you've never made a game before. Maybe I am not the one you should come talk to, because that's not the size of investment we do first round. So you need to know the investor, know the size of the publisher. Many publishers are very genre or focused, so just do your homework, and we will see that in the pitch deck.
There is one caveat to that, though, and again, like with Devolver, because we are kind of unique. Like, if you do your homework on Devolver, you'll come away with a piece of paper and it will say like pigeon dating simulator, first-person shooter, murder simulator, mobile games, and it's really, with Devolver, it's really hard to do your homework.
That means that you accept a lot of things.
Yeah, exactly.
That means you're open.
Exactly.
And, it doesn't matter what game I do. Maybe I stand a chance with Devolver.
That's exactly right. Yeah. But the point is, the main point is, I do get pitches now and again, and they're often shows, and someone will come in, and obviously they'll be nervous, like, pitching's a terrible event for everyone. And they'll come in and be like, they have their laptop, and they'll go, hi, I've got this game. It's not a Devolver game, but you might want to have a look at it anyway. And my response is always like, well, get the fuck out. Because we will sign, as long as the game is better than anything else, we will consider it. So for us, like, the homework is your game the best? Yes, it's a Devolver game. If it's not, then keep working on it.
Right. I think it's also like, if you're going to conferences like Gamescom or GDC and you want to book a meeting with any of us, I think it's smart of you to tell us why you want to meet us. And what I mean with that is that you can ask, like, what is your strategy for the next coming years? But that's more a meet and greet. That's not really pitching. That's trying to get a business card and get to know the business model. How do you work? How do you work? And I think that's more of a meet and greet meeting, while the other one is a pitch. And it's way easier for me to know which meeting I'm stepping into, because sometimes I've stepped into a meeting and like, oh, this is really, really interesting, and this is super cool. It's like, wow, and then suddenly it's like, oh, you were pitching something. Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, no, okay, now I need to change hats and just start thinking in a different perspective.
That's true.
So I think it's like, please, when you book meetings, just say, hey, I just want to say hi. That can be 5 minutes, or it's this. I'm pitching a game. We always try to tell everyone, like, remember that we're an investor for equity. We are not a publisher. Remember that. We can connect you with publishers, but because I've had people come and pitch the game and said, like, we just need the project funding, and I said, oh, I'm sorry. It looks great. Like, here's I can send you to someone else, like a publisher, and that's. I don't want to waste people's time.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm aware of time, so if anyone has any questions, we might have time for one or two. Okay, great. You want to step up to the mic?
In the spotlight.
Is that on? Hello?
Yep.
Oh, okay. So earlier, like in the start of the conversation, you said that, is there anyone here who's think that the publishers are like the enemy or whatnot? What is a kind of like a thing or like a stereotype that you want to negate to those people right now about publishers?
A common one is that, there's two that we hear a lot, and it's sad that we hear them. But one is, are you going to change our game? Do you want hands in the game? Obviously, from our point of view, that's no. The other one, which is slightly murkier, is what do you want from us in this deal? A lot of developers are very worried that they'll lose their IP, that they'll lose their ideas in the course of doing that deal with the publisher. And unfortunately, historically, that has been, in some cases, that's been the case. I think it's a lot better now. I think that most people treat IP rights a lot more sensibly, but there was a period of time, especially in the kind of early indie times, when a few studios felt like, hang on, and they got to the end of their game, and they're like, oh man, we sold our IP in order to make that game. So that was a criticism that I think was floating around, but I think it's improved now.
I think it has. I mean, I think it has, and I think there's a lot of emerging publishers as well, and the mid-tier publishers. I don't think you can get away with that, even if you were trying to do that. You can't be an asshole basically about that. You've got to. What's important to developers is ideas, and we have to respect those. I think we're very similar as well. We give publishers, with developers, we fall in love with what you want to make, so we let you make it, I think, and we respect you enough to do that. But I think it's, but it's different, when you were talking about analogies, and is it like a client-agency relationship? And it's not really that either. It's kind of equal, and I think the communication and, you're working with this team now. They're your team. It's your marketing team. It's your team who are going to help you do porting or all of these services that publishers offer. You can lean on your publisher now. This is your support, you're both sides of the same thing, basically. Yeah, you're bringing all the creativity, but we're bringing the business. It's kind of so the Pet Shop Boys said, "You've got the brains, we've got the brawn. Let's make lots of money." Well, quoting the Pet Shop Boys is always the best thing to do in a situation like this. But it's a partnership of equals, and then you lean on them and get the most out of them. But you're equals in it. No one's better than the other. You both do brilliant things, both companies. So communicate so that you make the most out of it.
I think the third one is also like, we're going to take all your money. We're going to take all your ideas. We're going to take all your money. We're going to use you. We're going to trick you. We're going to do all of that, which is simply not true, because for everyone to make money and for you to reach success of doing that, we need to help you, work with you. That's why we invest a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of money to help you reach that. The only way, for example, like for an investor, for us to be able to get our investment back, like if I invest 1 million Norwegian krona for 20% of your company and you own 80%, that is to make you a millionaire. To make sure that you earn enough money for me to just get my million back, then you will then get 4 or 5 million back. So I think it's still a partnership. We work together, and I think that's still something that we try to tell people, like, we're not dangerous. We're not to steal and take all your stuff. Also, just like you guys, all the IPs that we have in our partner studios to invest in stays with the partner studio. It's yours, and we can help you refine them and work with them if you want to, but they're yours. We're not taking them up in any way. So I think there's a lot of myths going around how we act, and we simply don't do that, like, in this modern time and age.
Okay, well, we'll run out of time, so if we've got another question, quickly.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So you've talked a bit about how partnership is so important, and does it ever occur where you have to let a company or game developers go, even though the game looks promising, just because the partnership is not working?
As an after investment, or before, while we're deciding on to invest or not?
While deciding on whether or not to invest or
Yeah.
to publish.
Yeah, that happens. It's a great product, but we have a problem. It could be, for example, a cap table, which is like who owns the company. And if there's too many that owns the company, like owns 1%, it is quite hard for us to invest in it, because when we invest, we want to make sure that the money that we invest goes into the production of your games. And for me to be able to do that, we want as few. We don't want to have like lots and lots of owners that doesn't really work at the company. They just pitched in. To be able to do that, then we need to buy them out. Not the founders, not the people working at the company, but someone has taken a loan or invested something before, like an angel investor. We like to buy them out so that and either give some shares back or we take part of that. And sometimes it's too complex. It's too complex. Great game, but I'm not sure how we can solve this from a legal perspective, or because once we bought everyone out, there's no money left for the company to put into production, and that's sometimes a problem, unfortunately.
Yeah, sometimes it's also government issues. We've had cases where some governments think, oh, we don't want so-and-so to have X amount of investments in this industry and whatnot. So sometimes it's not about the games developer or the investment company, but sometimes it's external reasons.
Yeah, some countries don't allow like an external investor from another country to invest more than X% in the company. And that might be a problem because it might be too little for us to go in.
Yeah, and from like a more traditional kind of publishing point of view, we're quite unique, so it's like a specific case, but we tend to think that most games, like if there was something there when we signed it, and the developer has lost sight of that thing, they just need support. They need time, they need money, they may need more team members, they may need, to take a holiday. They may need to stop making the game for a bit. But, all you do if you cancel games is you just leave more developers running around going, oh, God, what should I do with my time? Whereas, developers do get burnt out pretty quickly, especially if they're less experienced, if they don't know how to manage their time. And burnt out developers tend to make kind of crap games. So if the game is going in that direction, we, kind of dissolving a partnership is the very, very, very last thing that we would ever want to do, and we've never really had to do that in 10 years. There have been a case or two where we didn't continue working with the developer, but that's always been because the developer has said, you know what, I want to take this in a different direction, and then you go, you know what, please do, it's your game, you take it in whatever direction you need to. So, like I say, that's quite a luxurious position to be in. From our point of view, we've set up the system so that it allows for that, and we have a contract which reflects that as well. It's quite, we pride ourselves on our flexibility when it comes to that thing. But it comes back to this idea of a partnership. You should be able to say to someone, you know what, let's do something different. Let's add something, remove something, or change something, which is going to help us all kind of get through it.
From an investor perspective, there is actually, on rare occasions, there's a possibility of, if you see the partnership go completely, going somewhere else, if we would own like 10% of the company, we can actually just take that 10% and it's like, and give that back to you and say, we're going to give it back to you for free. If that is what's going to make you happy to go on, and because we're not sharing the vision anymore. It's very rare because at the same time, we never want to exit a company. We want to be there for the very, very long term. But that is actually an opportunity as well, or a possibility to actually say, be free, if you want to do that. And usually that might be if usually that opportunity might arise if the studio kind of crumbles from internally. People have worked together for a long time, and people are starting to leaving, and there's not much to save. It doesn't matter how much money we throw on it, because that is not the problem. It could be passion, people are leaving or being burned out. That can be saying, like, whoever the founders that are left, if we give the 10% back, then you might be able to do something with it that we can't, because we never want to be in the way. If we're in the way, we shouldn't be there. If we can't help you anymore.
Okay, brilliant. So hopefully we've come away and realised that publishers and investors are not the bad guys.
We should answer those two in the back.
Yeah.
Are you still okay,
your
or?
mind?
Okay. Hey.
Good. Okay, so hopefully you guys, as you think about building your game studios, you've got a better insight into the benefit and the ways that you can work with publishers and investors. So I want to say a big round of applause to everyone who participated.